Now, here are a few other things that I've already implied. If you are in charge of a team, so you have the power to shape the team, to decide who gets on the team, what can you do to make the team more successful? The first one is to have a real team task. When you define the mission that the team will work on, ask yourself, is this complex? Does this problem really require a team? One of the worst things that happens in an organization is when you have a meeting with people just because. Like we always have a Monday meeting, no matter what. And sometimes there's nothing that the meeting needs to address, and you're wasting everybody's time. So if you don't need people to work on complex problems, don't waste their time. Once you've decided that, yes, you need a team, you have a complex problem, think about how you're going to formulate that problem to the team. So it's very important to set a clear direction for the team to work on so that they are on the same page. And there's two aspects to that. One which I call the leadership side and the other one the management side. And we'll talk more about that next class when we talk about leadership. So the first leg of the journey is to create a shared vision that's motivating and that's accepted by everybody. So what is the story that you tell your teammates about what they're about to accomplish so that they can be like, yeah, that's something we should work on. That's something important. That's something complex. That's something challenging. It's kind of like the marketing of the project to the team. How do you market it to them so that they're excited about it? That's the job of, remember the Kennedy New Frontier speech, right? How do you, as a president, create excitement for a country to work on a few set of goals? Right? So what speech do you give to them so they're like, yeah, we're part of something big, that matters. We feel uplifted to be working on this, lofty goal. So that's the pep talk that leaders give. Once you've told a story, what you want to do next is operationalize it into specific, measurable, and realistic performance goals. So you have the overarching goal of saying, like, by the end of this decade, we're going to send a man to the moon and bring him back safely. That's the moonshot of Kennedy. That was the mission of NASA. NASA was created in 10 years had 10 years to send a man to the moon and bring them back safely, right? How do you make that happen? So you have to have a set of specific, measurable, realistic performance goals that allow you to keep track of where you're going. What happens in teams is teams are more likely than individuals to lose track of their progress because not one person alone is accountable for the progress of the team. So having a specific, measurable, and realistic performance goals is helpful. If you have the power to decide who should be in the team and who shouldn't be in the team, remember that having diverse skills and perspectives in a team is helpful. It's going to make your team more effective. Because diversity of worldviews gives you the ability to see more facets of the same problem. So one proxy for diversity of worldviews is demographic diversity. So having different genders, different ages, different races. But the research shows that more than demographic diversity, really diversity of skills and backgrounds is more important. So having people who are trained as doctors, people who are trained as engineers, people who are trained as artists, people who are trained as gardeners, whatever. Like imagine a group of people who are very different backgrounds, different skills, working together on a given project. They're more likely, imagine a gardener meets a doctor, meets an engineer, and they all given a problem to solve. They're going to have a very different way of seeing the problem, you can imagine, right? They're going to have a lot of disagreements. They might not appreciate each other's views. But if you put them in a room and have them discuss, they will come with something more creative than if you put 3 engineers in the same room, or 3 doctors, or 3 gardeners in the same room, right? Understand what I'm saying? So really, again, people who stretch your view of the world by coming from a very different perspective, if you can work with each other and not kill each other in the process because you don't appreciate each other, then that can really lead to high-performing teams. So if you need a lot of creativity, have diverse team members. Reasonably stable membership, that's a factor that's useful in project teams where you expect that maybe some, like let's say you have a project team that lasts 4 years. You pick people in the organization that can help you on that project. Ask yourself, who's likely to leave? Because they might be promoted, they might go somewhere else. Whenever somebody leaves a team, they're part of the memory of the team, and you lose that memory that they have, and you have to bring a replacement that you need to re-socialize into the team. So if you always have people coming in and out of a team, you're going to lose part of the stability of the team, and so you want to have reasonably stable membership. Rewards. Let's talk a little bit about rewards. So let me tell you a little story. I worked for Morgan Stanley, the trading floor in Paris, in the fixed income division for a little while. And every morning we had a meeting, an all-hands meeting of the trading floor, where the head of the trading floor would ask everybody to share their opinion on what was going to happen today in the market. What's your sense of what's happening? Any things that might be coming up? And usually those meetings were an utter failure. People would not share much information about what they thought was going to happen in the market. And I remember my boss getting frustrated, and my boss was a little crazy. And I didn't think of him as a very good boss. I didn't have much respect for him. But so he would get upset at people and start calling them names and say, you guys are just a bunch of egoists, not sharing your stuff. Like yesterday there was this big thing happening and you knew about it and you didn't share it. So he would call people out like that. And didn't really change much. Now look at the structure of a trading floor. So you have a base salary, and the majority of the money you make is the commission that you make on the trade you make, and the deals you make. And it goes to you personally. You make a 60 million deal with a high margin, that's, today, that goes in your bonus. If you share that with somebody else and they steal your business, they're taking away your bonus. So you're rewarded to not share information with others. So when people receive individual rewards, the lesson, and I expect, is that if you have people who have individual rewards and you expect them to collaborate as a team, that's not going to work. That's not a smart incentive system. If you want people to collaborate as a team, you need to have collective rewards. Now, if the trading floor as a whole had a collective bonus for the collective trades that were done every day, if you had a balance between individual rewards and collective rewards, you would be much more likely to have people collaborate and share information. Right? Now, that boss probably didn't have the power to change the incentives, but he didn't quite understand them either, even though he was the boss of Morgan Stanley's trading floor. Right? So you can get, a high position and not be smart about everything. What's the on collective rewards? What's the good balance? If you have 100% individual rewards, you will have no collaboration. If you have 100% collective rewards, then it's like communism. You have no incentive for people to work above and beyond others. Right? The whole sort of principle of capitalism and individualism in America, especially in countries like that, is if I work hard, I get the benefit of my hard work to some extent. Right? So you want a mix of the two. It depends on how much collaboration you want. If you need a lot of collaboration, maybe 50-50 would be a good limit. Now, there's been research in human resources about that that shows that in countries like the US that are very individualistic, people don't like 50-50. They think that's communism. They think that's socialism. Usually people are more like 60% individual, 60 to 70% individual rewards, and 30 to 40% collective rewards. But so think about, can you have collective rewards for the team to motivate the team? Teams might need training or coaching in order to learn how to work well as a team. So, that's understood in sports. Sports teams have coaches, even though they have a captain. In the business world, sometimes you put people together in a team and expect them to work with each other, and they don't have training, they don't have a coach, right? So for important teams whose work is crucial, it might be worthwhile, the investment, to have a facilitator that comes and helps the team work with each other. So that's how you have consultants come in. That's how you have leadership coaches come in. So that's how you have training programs for people, teaching people how to work with each other. In essence, giving people a class like this, an organizational behavior class. You guys have had this class, so you have some, at the end of the class, hopefully you will have some understanding about how to work better as a team. But not everybody has that. A few more principles about how to avoid the common pitfalls of teams. This was more about the structure. How can you structure a team for it to be successful? This is more about how you can manage a team while it's been formed to be more successful. So this covers a little bit the readings you've had. Roles are useful in keeping a team on track. So these 5 roles that I have on the screen are what we call process roles. So you have task roles, which are which part of the problem are you focusing on? Let's say like you guys work as a team, you have to design a new car. I don't know, maybe that's too complex, but let's say you have to design a new kind of bicycle, right? Let's say you guys are a group of engineers, engineer students from Cal Poly, working on designing a new bicycle. And you might decide some of us are going to focus on the wheels, some of us are going to focus on the frame, some of us are going to focus on the derailleur, right? So that's task specialization. So you can have task roles, task functions. But process roles are designed assigning a responsibility to each member of the team for how the team works together as a social entity. So it's regulating the social interaction. So 5 roles can be useful. The first one is facilitator. I like to think of the facilitator as the sort of the mother of the team. The facilitator makes sure that everybody participates, that no member is left on the side silent. So make sure that people who might be more introverted or less likely to talk, invite them to talk. Say, hey, I'd like to know what you're thinking. We haven't heard from you on this issue. What are you thinking? They make sure that the dominant members, the people who talk a lot, don't dominate the conversation. And say, in a polite way, like, thank you very much for your inputs. Let's hear from so-and-so. Right? They make sure that a group respects its ground rules, its ground norms. That's what the facilitator does, essentially. The facilitator typically will not participate a lot in the task itself, but focus on the process. Another rule that's useful to have is a timer. So we all tend to lose track of time, but in teams, we're even more likely to lose track of time. So if you say you have a meeting for an hour, you might find yourself taking 15 minutes to get started because people are chit-chatting. After that, chatty members will overtake the team for another 15 minutes. Now you have 30 minutes left, and you've started talking only about your first agenda item, and you have 6 other agenda items, right? I mean, I've seen this happen all of the time in faculty meetings, for example. So having a timekeeper, a timer, the timer is supposed to be the one who says, okay, we're going to have like devote 10 minutes to this item, 10 minutes to this item, 5 minutes to that. And you don't want them to be overly uptight about the schedule, but remind the team, we've spent 10 minutes on that, we need to move on. Right? That's a very important skill to have to manage meetings, having a timer. Sometimes the facilitator can be acting as the timer. Scribe. A scribe is a person who takes notes on the board, on a computer, and records what people are saying in a meeting. Like when you had your survival exercise, was somebody taking notes? Did you have somebody take notes? Right. So sometimes, you were in this room, you didn't have access much to boards, but a lot of people would say stuff that's useful and nobody records it and it's lost. It's lost in the sort of flow of like conversation in the team. So making sure that one person records everything is useful. When you have, in some cases, like in trials, you have a person whose job is actually to transcribe everything that's being said in the trial. So transcribe that. So sometimes in some very important meeting you want to have that, but just having a person take the notes of what was said is useful. Minutes writer, it's related to scribe. At the end of a meeting, the minutes writer will summarize everything that was decided at the meeting, the ideas they would put forth, who was assigned responsible for what, and distribute that to the whole team so that everybody knows what they're supposed to do by the next meeting. So in this day and age of computers and iPads and iPhones, it's so easy. If you have a person write on the board, you can take a picture with the iPhone of what was decided there and then send it to everybody else. So if somebody has taken notes on a computer, for everybody to see that you project there, you can also send those notes directly to everybody else. I know this sounds like details, a little boring details of meetings, but those will be very, very important when you start working and you start being part of teams. Last role is the devil's advocate. Now that role is meant to, I keep wanting to sit here, but I have my mic. Devil's advocate is a role that's designed to help prevent groupthink. So groupthink is when everybody's on the same page and they have the wrong decision. So let's go back to, again, the Kennedy team on the Bay of Pigs fiasco. Imagine comes the question of the Cuban Air Force. First person to speak say, oh yeah, the Cuban Air Force, easy. We'll just commit 4 planes and wipe them out. They're outdated, they're not trained. It's just like they'll be really afraid when they see our planes. They'll abandon. That's easy. And everybody else nods in agreement. It's like, yeah, that's probably like right. They know what they're talking about. The devil's advocate's role would be when you have a consensus that's reached too quickly. Their role is to say, wait a second, we seem to all be in agreement, but are we correct? What if we're wrong? In your survival thing, imagine everybody wants to leave the site. But let's leave, let's go back. Devil's advocate would be, wait a second, what if we stayed? Don't you think there's value and merit in this idea? Can we examine this for a second? So that's the devil's advocate, defending the solution that nobody has considered. Especially when the group seems to have an easy consensus that might be a sign of laziness, of intellectual laziness, or just simply lack of imagination. Now, where you have to be careful about devil's advocate is some people are contrarians. Some people like to disagree with everything and like to block everything by saying I disagree with that. So I'm sure you've met those naysayers that try to block everything and always disagree with everything. So if you pick a person like that to be the devil's advocate, then they can block the progress of the team. So you want to have somebody who can raise questions and be willing to consider moving on. So it's a delicate balance. Let's talk about norms for a minute. So what are norms? Norms are related to rules. So rules are written criteria that indicate how you should behave in a group or in a social situation. Norms are similar to rules, except they're unwritten, they're unsaid. They sometimes happen by themselves, they are emergent. So when you start meeting with a certain group of people, there will be norms about politeness that will emerge, norms about humor, what kind of humor exists, norms about camaraderie, norms about how you interrupt each other, who tends to speak first and then second. Some norms are effective and some norms are not so effective. So when you consider the life of a team, after a while, after it has established its norms, you can look at them and ask yourself which of those are effective and which of those are not effective. And you can discourage those that are ineffective and encourage those that are effective. So this is a little bit related to the exercise we did last class, the survival exercise. Here are effective norms. Self-monitoring and self-evaluation among team members. So looking at your own performance, but also other people's performance in the team. So imagine in a sports team, if it's not just the captain or the coach that looks at the performance of each team player, but every team player cares about the outcome and calls each other out, the team is going to be more effective. Make contributions public. Part of the problem with social loafing, the reason it happens, is that when you are in a group, it's hard to hold people individually accountable for the group outcome. Right, so the tug of war, right? I'm part of a group of 50, and I'm pretending to pull, but I'm tired, so I'm letting myself be dragged by the whole thing, and my team loses. Who can say, JF, you didn't pull hard enough? I can say, no, I was pulling as hard as I could. You know, how do you know, right? Now, if I was given a handle that measured how much I pulled, now there's a way to hold me accountable, right? So if I'm held accountable, I'm more likely to work hard for the team. So when you announce what your contributions are going to be to the team, when you make them public, that's a way to create a way to be held accountable. When you say, I'm going to be doing this for the team, I'm going to be doing this part of the project, and I'll deliver it to the team by next Tuesday. That's a way of saying, now if I don't do that, you can hold me accountable. Having a certain cohesion, solidarity, esprit de corps in a team is helpful. It's related to trust, common destiny, commitment. We talked about having shared airtime, making sure that everybody has an opportunity to communicate their point of view, being curious about dissenting point of views, being open-minded, encouraging conflict about issues, not people, testing consensus rather than voting. So let's talk about this a little bit more. Voting is thought of as a democratic process, but we talked about that last time, right? But it can curtail discussion. The minority that might be right could be overridden by the majority. So consensus testing ensures that you lengthen the discussion until everybody can leave with a decision. That leads to better decision making. And finally, having the leader speak last, that's a way to avoid groupthink. So imagine, again, so Kennedy walks into the room where his advisors are assembled and says, I think we should go with this course of action for this problem. What do you guys think? What do you think people are going to say? Yeah, Mr. President, great idea. I was thinking the same thing. It takes a lot of guts to confront the leader and say, Mr. Kennedy, I think you're wrong. Or I really think that's a very dangerous course of actions. You know, it takes a lot of fortitude to do that. So if the leader speaks last and says, here's the problem, I have my bias, but I don't want to share it now, I want to hear your opinions. People are much more likely to speak freely. So that doesn't mean the leader doesn't have an opinion. It means that the leader is exerting discipline to wait and let other opinions emerge. That's a way to avoid groupthink.